When you learn a new language, having a basis in the grammar of your own helps you in learning, especially for a language like Latin or any of the other Romance languages where there is a direct connection to English. So you probably already know what a noun is. It's a person, place, thing, or sometimes an intangible idea. And you also know what a verb is. It's the action in the sentence. Let's think of our sentence as a car. The verb is the motor because it's the engine, and just as you can't have a car without an engine, you can't have a proper sentence without a verb. You also really only have one verb in the sentence and one engine in the car. The nouns are like the other parts: the body frame, the rearview mirror, the seats, the steering wheel. And the adjectives in the sentence are like the things that make our car flashy: the loud stereo, the plush leather seats, the red color, and the, racing stripes that make our car go fast. Well, that's a great analogy, but did you know that there are different types of verbs? There are also different types of nouns, too. That's what this video will discuss. And really, this is one of the most important parts of learning about grammar, especially when you want to learn Latin. So get your popcorn, get out your pen for notes, and take heed. Here are 3 sentences. The phone rings, the wonderful Latin student answers the phone, and Julius Caesar is her friend. Okay, the verbs in each sentence are pretty easy to find: rang, answered, and is. Sometimes it's hard to pick out that short verb. We'll get back to it in a second, though. Let's think about verbs in terms of doers and receivers. In our first sentence, we have the phone, that's the noun, and it's doing the verb. It's doing the ringing. But the action stops here. There's no receiver of the action like there is in the second sentence. Here, let's illustrate it. The wonderful Latin student does the answering, and the phone receives the answering. You can think of the action flowing from our student through the verb and finally resting on the phone. So let's make a very general observation. Some verbs bring the action to another noun, like answers continues the action through to the phone. These verbs are called transitive because the verb simply carries the action across to another noun, kind of like how a bridge connects 2 different sides of a river. In Latin, the word trans means across, so the term transitive can be easy to remember. But if we look at the verb rings, you can see that the action stops at the verb. So since the verb doesn't bring the action across to another noun, we call this an intransitive verb. Here the prefix in is used to mean not, in the case of involuntary or inexact. It's kind of like a bridge to nowhere. There's one more verb that we haven't discussed, and that's the is in the last sentence. This very basic word serves as the link between the left and the right-hand side, so we can call this a linking verb. It's really a big equal sign between the 2 parts. If we replace it and make it into a sort of math equation, we still get the same meaning for the sentence. Julius Caesar equals her best friend. And we can put many things on either side of this equation, like an adjective, awesome, or a prepositional phrase, in the form. So, good. We've covered the 3 different types of verbs, but there are also different kinds of nouns in our sentence. Let's go back to the idea of doers. Every verb is going to have a subject, a noun that controls the verb, kind of like how a captain controls a boat. Our subjects in these sentences in English almost always come right before the verb. And in our sentences, it's the noun that does the action. So our subjects are phone, student, and Julius Caesar. An easy way to find the subject in a sentence is to ask yourself the question: who or what? Insert verb here. So let's play this game. Who or what rings? The phone, and that's our subject. Who or what answers the phone? The wonderful Latin student. That's our subject. And who or what is her friend? Julius Caesar. Again, that's our subject. But what about the phone in our second sentence? It's not the subject, and it's not doing the action, it's receiving it. This is what is called the direct object, and it gets the action from the verb. So we have a sentence like, I love the girl. I is the subject, and the girl is the object of my affection. Right, the direct object. We have a handy question formula too for finding direct objects. Whom or what? Insert subject and verb here. So whom or what did the student answer? The phone, and that's our direct object. Do you notice that intransitive verbs don't have direct objects, and that transitive verbs do have direct objects? That's the basic difference between these 2 types of verbs. They both have subjects, but transitive verbs have direct objects, while intransitive verbs do not. There are two big warnings for verbs. Say we have an intransitive verb like rings, but we add more to our sentence, like in the hallway with a loud noise. It's tempting to think that this makes rings into a transitive verb, but you always need to look at how the action is transferred. Here, in the hallway and with a loud noise are just prepositional phrases that show us where the phone was ringing and in what way it was ringing. Since rings doesn't have a direct object, it is still an intransitive verb. Also, English can say, the phone is ringing. Aha! The verb is in our sentence, so it must be a linking verb. No, sorry. English can use is plus the ing form of the verb to show something that's happening over a period of time in the present. And is ringing is our verbal unit, just like rings, only with two words. We would consider is ringing to be a form of ring and an intransitive verb. This is a lot to take in, but these points of grammar are the most important distinctions to know in English before you start to learn Latin. All verbs have a subject, the thing that does the action and controls the verb. Some verbs have direct objects, the thing that receives the action. These verbs are called transitive because the action goes across the verb from the subject to the direct object. Some verbs can't take direct object, like rings or walks. These verbs are called intransitive. Then there's the linking verb is, which is more like an equal sign. It links two things together that are essentially equivalent. So, if a dentist extracts a tooth, even without knowing what extracts means, you can say that it's a transitive verb because it has both a subject, the dentist, and a direct object, the tooth. If the patient sits in the chair, we can say that sits is an intransitive verb because it doesn't have a direct object, especially once you recognize that in the chair is a prepositional phrase. And if the patient's teeth are dirty, we can easily say that are, the plural form of is a linking verb.